The moment I turned onto Willow Lane, my heart sank into my boots. My foot hovered over the brake, my old pickup rattling to a stop as I stared at the carnage where my fence used to stand. A century-old masterpiece wrought iron, hand-forged by a blacksmith who'd served VY-VED to CI-VYL war, was now a twisted heap of metal and shattered concrete. And there, sipping lemonade like she'd just won the lottery, stood Evelyn Harper, the self-anointed dictator of our homeowners association. She waved at me, her smile dripping with smug satisfaction, as if she'd done me a favor. "That eyesore's finally gone," she chirped, brushing a speck of dust off her pristine white blazer. "You're welcome, Daniel." I couldn't speak. My jaw hung slack as I stepped out of the truck, the scent of diesel and hot steel stinging my nose. Evelyn didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She stood there, proud as a peacock, flanked by a construction crew packing up their gear hard hats, and a bulldozer still rumbling in the background. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all I could do was stare at the wreckage of something I'd spent my life protecting. That fence wasn't just a boundary. It was a legacy, a piece of history tied to my family in this town. And Evelyn had crushed it without a second thought. 3 days earlier, life had been calm, almost idyllic, if you ignore the occasional passive-aggressive HOA newsletter dictating the precise angle at which trash cans should sit curbside. I'd inherited the house from my grandfather, a retired historian who'd spent his twilight years preserving its Gothic charm. Pointed arches, stained glass windows, and a turret that creaked like it housed a ghost. But the real treasure was the fence. It encircled the property in elegant black swirls, adorned with rosettes and rivets hammered by a man whose hands had shaped iron through war and peace. Tourists snapped photos of it. The local historical society featured it in their brochures. Even old Mr. Grayson, the blacksmith's great-grandson, stopped by once a year to polish it with me, sharing stories of its creation. Everyone loved it, everyone except Evelyn. From the day I moved in 5 years ago, she despised that fence with a venom I couldn't fathom. To her, it was a rebellion against her VY shown of suburban perfection. Beige houses, manicured lawns, and not a single blade of grass out of place. She called the violation of the HOA's aesthetic unity policy, a phrase she'd coined herself and wielded like a scepter. She hated anything that stood out, anything with character, and she especially hated being ignored. I'd made that mistake early on. She'd marched over with a binder of approved fence colors, all shades of taupe. I'd nodded politely, shut the door, and forgotten about it. That was my first misstep. My second was underestimating the lengths she'd go to bend the world to her will. It started small. A letter arrived citing me for excessive fence height. I sent back a copy of the National Historic Register Certificate Pro, VY-ing its protected status, no response. Then came the fines, $75 a day for non-compliance. My lawyer, Tom, a grizzled ex-Marine with a laugh like gravel, told me to ignore them. "Your property predates the HOA by a century, Dan. They've got no jurisdiction." So I did. But Evelyn didn't let it go. Complaints piled up. My roses were too red, my porch light too vintage, my mailbox too eccentric. She even claimed a tourist taking a photo lowered property values. I thought she was just a nuisance, a busybody with too much time. I didn't realize she was plotting a war. The weekend it happened, I'd left town for a history conference in Richmond. I locked the gates, flipped on the porch lights, and drove off without a worry. Evelyn saw her chance. She called an emergency HOA meeting, never notifying me, and pushed through a motion for immediate remediation of non-compliant structures. Her cronies on the board nodded along. The rest were too exhausted to fight her. The next morning, she hired a demolition crew, forged my approval with a breezy "he said it's fine," and baked them cookies to seal the deal. By Sunday afternoon, when I rolled back into town, my fence was a memory, and Evelyn was basking in her VY Tory. "You'll thank me later," she said, twirling her straw as I photographed the rubble. It was dragging the whole street down. I bent down, picking up a bent rosette I'd polished with Grandpa when I was a kid. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I asked, my voice low and trembling. She rolled her eyes. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Daniel. It was old. My blood boiled, not just from anger, but from her sheer arrogance. This wasn't petty vandalism. This was a federal crime destruction of a registered historic landmark. I snapped photos of the work order sheet signed, got the crew foreman's name, and dialed Tom. He picked up on the second ring. She did what? He barked. I explained. He went silent, then said, "This is bad, Dan. Felony bad. Feds will be involved." I glanced at Evelyn, now scolding a neighbor about their hedge height. Obly VY us to the storm she'd unleashed. That night, I filed a police report. The officer, a young guy named Ortiz, took one look at the registry papers and whistled. Protected, huh? There's a plaque on the gatepost. I corrected. She bulldozed that too. He shook his head. Got a call on the feds. By morning, a federal investigator was on Evelyn's doorstep. For once, her clipboard couldn't save her. But Evelyn didn't back down. She strutted around the neighborhood like nothing happened, issuing more violation notices. One for my unauthorized debris, the fence she destroyed. Another for my disruptive behavior, or taking photos. She was doubling down, betting I'd fold. She didn't know me at all. I wasn't just mad he was done. I started digging. Neighbors came forward with their own stories. Mrs. Patel had been fined for her son's chalk drawings. Mr. Hensley lost his birdhouse to Evelyn's clutter crackdown. A widow named Clara confessed Evelyn threatened to lien her house over a faded mailbox. This wasn't an HOA. It was a reign of terror. I collected their statements, every letter Evelyn sent, and handed them to Tom. He grinned. We got a gold mine here. Then I hit City Hall. Old records showed my house and half the block predated the HOA. Historic landmarks were exempt from their rules. Evelyn's entire campaign was built on sand. She didn't stop. At a tea party for her board allies, she ranted about ungrateful residents and floated a plan to rewrite the HOA charter, retroactively justifying her actions. A neighbor, Jake, slipped in and recorded it. She's unhinged, he whispered, handing me the file. She thinks she's untouchable. I smiled grimly. Not for long. The next day, she scheduled a beautification vote to tighten her grip. I fought back hard. I printed flyers with photos of the fence, excerpts from the registry, and a list of her abuses. I dropped them in every mailbox, knocked on doors, and posted Jake's recording online. The VY Deo went VY Row. HOA tyrant bulldozes history. The tide turned. People stopped whispering and started shouting. 2 days before the vote, Evelyn sent a crew to remove hazardous fixtures from my lawn and sign work order. Same old tricks. I stood on my porch, phone recording, and told them to leave or face arrest. They bolted. The clip hit the local news. Suburban standoff escalates. Evelyn hated the spotlight. She thrived in shadows, wielding confusion like a weapon. Now, cameras followed her every move. At the vote, she arrived with a stack of proposals and her trademark smirk, but the room was cold. Neighbors marked their ballots in silence. Her plan crashed 80 fan tram against. She stormed out, claiming fraud. No one cared. I thought that'd be the end, but Evelyn was a cockroach, stubborn and resilient. The feds came back, digging into HOA finances. Turns out, due on $90,000 in fines over 4 years had vanished into community projects. A gazebo for Evelyn's backyard, a new sprinkler system for her lawn, even a trip to a leadership seminar in Florida. The demolition crew flipped, handing over a forged order with Evelyn's signature and a note. Urgent owner approved. Tom called it the nail in her coffin. The Department of Justice opened a case. Destruction of federal property, fraud, obstruction. One night, agents escorted her to a car, no arrested, but close. The neighborhood buzzed with glee. Without Evelyn, Willow Lane exhaled. The HOA crumbled, then rebuilt. At a packed town hall, folks demanded transparency. Someone nominated me as president. You stood up to her, they said. I took the gig, vowing to undo her damage. We posted every record online, launched a tool-sharing program, and secured a grant to rebuild the fence. A local blacksmith, inspired by the saga, crafted it by hand better than before. At the unveiling, We lit it up with a spotlight and added a plaque. The Iron Sentinel rebuilt by resilience. Evelyn faded. Her house sat unsold, weeds choking her lawn. Then, months later, fake violation slips appeared in mailboxes, same font, same venom. A neighbor's camera caught her sneaking around at night, hooded and desperate. We laughed it off, but she didn't stop. She sued me for emotional distress, claiming I'd ruined her life. In court, her lawyer floundered. Tom's binder of evidence of photos, records, VY shut it down. The judge fined her for wasting time. She slunk away, alone. The block party that summer was epic. Food trucks, a bounce house, a fence-shaped cake. I gave a speech, short and raw. She tried to erase us, but she woke us up instead. Cheers erupted. Weeks later, a tour group stopped by the fence. The guide recounted its tale, how a tyrant fell, and a neighborhood rose. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, feeling not just peace but pride. Evelyn thought she could bulldoze history. She didn't realize history fights back and wins. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.